Okay, so our third yoga tool again is about breathing and builds upon what we've already learned with just that in through the nose, out through the nose breathing, and that equal ratio breath and the extending of the exhale. So now we're going to talk about what we call three-part breathing. Probably call it other things too. I call it three-part breathing. My yoga training calls it three-part breathing. And as well as lower body breathing, which you sometimes see abbreviated as LBB, and is a term that Amy Weintraub coined and other people have used as well. So three-part breath and lower body breathing, and they have things in common as we talk about them. Now, I'm not situated really well here for you to actually see my lower body, so you're going to have to imagine that in other class sessions, you'll be able to see all of me as we practice this breath. So always coming back to that, again, in through the nose, out through the nose, inhale and exhale, letting that kind of settle you down a little bit. And again, maybe putting both feet on the floor, sitting comfortably, sitting up nice and tall. These techniques can be done sitting. They can also be done lying on your back or in other positions. So whatever position you are comfortable in to do that breathing. So first, the three-part breath. So part of three-part breath is thinking about breath control. So as I mentioned before, as soon as we bring our attention to our breathing, we're already changing our breathing, we're already influencing our breathing, and we want to continue that influence, and we want to continue our ability to guide our breath. So I'm going to say, guide our breath rather than control our breath, right? Because it's not necessarily about control, but it's more about being in tune with that breath and being able to guide and direct that breath and get that breath to do things for you that make you feel better, for instance. So in terms of that guiding of the breath, when we think about the three-part breath, there's not three different parts that we are breathing into. It's all that, wholeness of our body and the wholeness of our lungs. As I mentioned before, the lungs are large organs, right? They take up a lot of space in our bodies, especially when we use them to full capacity, which most of us don't. So the first part of three-part breath, we're already pretty familiar with, and I talked about that in the first video, right? That part of the breathing when we're using just the very uppermost part of our lungs. So with three-part breath, we want to move that breath down into the deeper part of our lungs, down deeper into our bodies. So in yoga, we talk about three-part breath being the chest, the rib cage, and the belly. Now, some people instruct this breath as being belly, rib cage, lungs. Again, it's all in the lungs, but whichever way makes more sense for you. So as we practice this three-part breath, for me, it makes sense that, the breath comes in, it moves through the upper part of the lungs, down into the rib cage, down into the belly, and then it moves out of the belly, up into the rib cage, up into the lungs, and out of the body. But again, for some people, it makes more sense that we pull that breath down into our bellies and then let it fill up to the rib cage and then let it fill up to the top part of your lungs. So whatever makes the most sense for you. We'll also talk about belly breathing, which is in some ways a version of lower body breathing, but a little bit different as well. But again, that upper part of the lungs, breathing into the rib cage, breathing into the belly, that's that three-part breath. So really hard to show and demonstrate because you can't see the air coming in and out of my body. So you have to do it for yourself and you have to feel it for yourself. So if it helps, you can actually place your hands on your chest, on the base of your rib cage, on your belly, so that you can actually physically feel the air moving through the body in those ways. So if that's something that you like, you can try that out as well. Okay, so getting a little bit of a breath here to start with. So I like to think about kind of pulling that air in and down and feeling it expand down and out as it comes in. So part of this, again, guiding our breath comes with visualization and imagination. We have to visualize, we have to imagine the breath moving through our bodies, right? So as we inhale, we pull that breath again down into the top of the lungs. We let it expand down into the rib cage and let it expand down into the belly. And this takes practice. It might take years of practice. It might take not very long at all. And that just depends upon you. And there's no wrong way to do that. So maybe try practicing that 3-part breath a few times. Again, inhaling in, letting the rib cage expand, the lungs expand, the rib cage expand, the belly expand. And so when we think about like that belly breathing, lower body breathing, we're pulling that breath down into the very bottom of our lungs, using that full capacity of our lungs down so that the breath is pushing against the diaphragm, is pushing toward the lower body. So again, trying out that 3-part breath. You can also play with each of the parts. So you can inhale like we did before and just kind of let that breath stay here, feel it expand down into the upper part of the lungs and out, right? And then let it come down to the rib cage. And think about the dimensions of our body, right? The breath just doesn't go down and boom, boom, front, right? The breath comes down, it expands front, it expands sides, it expands out. So we might think about both the front side of the body and the back side of the body as we do any kind of breathing or that 3-part breathing. Let it expand all the way down into the lower body, and then let that breath come back up and out. So again, play with that a little bit, and then think a little bit more about lower body breathing and what that means. So in part, we might think about the lower body breathing. So that's the breath when it gets down to the belly, right? That's that lower body breathing of pulling that breath all the way down into our lower body. So part of that is a centering kind of exercise, right? So we pull that breath down into our belly, down into that point, that lowest point of gravity in our belly. In different traditions, we talk about that as being point, or that being the source. Pulling the breath down into that lower part of the body, helping to ground us, helping to stabilize us, helping to make us feel more safe in our surroundings, for instance. When we talk about lower body breathing, we can also talk about moving the breath even lower than the belly. And again, obviously the breath doesn't actually physically move down to our ankles, for instance, right? That would be pretty amazing. But again, through visualization, through imagination, we can send our breath into those different parts of our lower bodies. So as we are, for instance, in Shavasana at the end of class, relaxing and breathing, we might think about moving that breath up and down the body. We might think about moving it down into the legs, into the feet, into that lower body. And again, that kind of stabilizing, grounding, deeper breath that connects us more with ourselves and connects us more with the earth. So this one's a little bit tougher than the first 2 yoga tools. It, again, takes some practice. It takes some patience. If you're not getting it, try again. And of course, let me know if you have questions that I can help to enlighten you about the wonders and miracles of the 3-part breath and the lower body breathing. But again, a lot of it is up to you. Play with it, see where it takes you.